our proposition really is that I think we really provide sophisticated services, really at the same quality that you would get at any of the top firms, at a level of both efficiency and rate that I think is much more reasoned and attractive and provides some real value. I mean, I think there's nothing more frustrating for clients to pay, a huge hourly rate and then find out second and third year lawyers are doing their work. That's not something that you're going to get here. You're going to get seasoned senior lawyers who are going to do your work and take ownership of it. And, I think that's really what we provide more than anything.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, this is Max Pittman from WriteForMe, and you're listening to another episode of the Business Ninjas podcast. We're meeting experts who are making things happen and scaling their businesses. And actually today we're talking about Brown, Neary, Smith & Kahn, LLP with Mr. Ethan Brown, who is the managing partner at BNSK. Ethan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Max. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you being here and excited to dive into BNSK. And you guys are in the business litigation space specifically, and the firm itself has been around since 2012. So as I mentioned, I'm excited to dive into what's going on at BNSK. But before we jump into the organization itself and what your focuses are, our community is really built of entrepreneurs, executives, sales and marketing leaders. So as the managing partner at BNSK, I want to give you the floor just to kind of tell the community a little bit about yourself and some of the things you're focused on.
Sure. I've been practicing law since 1996. I went to Harvard Law School and then clerked for a judge in Massachusetts on the state Supreme Court for a year. Enjoyed that. Got to do some pretty high-profile, interesting things, and then worked for two very large law firms. What was then Hale and Dorr in Boston, and then moved to Latham and Watkins in Los Angeles. I got really blessed to work on some really incredible high-profile things. For example, we worked on the collapse of Enron, collapse of some of the other major companies that you would have heard of, WorldCom and so forth. And, eventually over the course of 15 years practicing at a big firm, I decided that I really wanted to do something that was really mine and was narrower in focus, still provided the same high quality services, but was more locally based, doing things that, I thought were more impactful to medium-sized businesses, local people that I actually knew instead of, just sort of giant multinational companies, and doing it in a way that I had a lot more control over.
Gotcha. Super interesting. It's funny to hear the name Enron. You haven't heard that in a while.
It's been a long time, but it was my life for about 5 years. I can't tell you how much time I spent in Houston, Texas, going back and forth.
That's interesting. It's cool to hear your journey and kind of hear where you started for sure. And it sounds like it's been a really interesting journey. But what I'm hearing now is you wanted to do something that you can own and manage yourself. It sounds like you kind of saw a gap in where your career was going and potentially even the market that you could potentially even start your own firm in. Does that sound fair?
It is. I remember one of the last big cases that I did that was that I was handling for myself at one of the large firms, and it was for a corporate client of the firm. We engaged in a arbitration involving the acquisition of a water company up in Idaho, and we spent several years litigating this, hard fought, tooth and nail with the other side. And I got what I was very proud of, a very good result. I got a judgment for almost $10 million. And I remember talking to the client and I said, "Are you happy? I mean, this is great. We won almost everything. We got a big award." And the client kind of shrugged and said, "Cost an awful lot of money to get here. We spent probably, $3.5–4 million to get there." And, I kind of thought to myself, wow, I could do this. I could get this same result, do really well for myself. I think have a much happier client and charge, half the money without the overhead of a, enormous law firm with a, office tower on the top floor of a big downtown office space with dozens of support staff and a whole team of junior associates that you have to keep busy. Um, I could have done this with myself and one teammate and done this a lot more efficiently, I think, and gotten really the same results or maybe even a better result. And that's really what we're trying to accomplish at BNSK, is to get those same really high quality results, really good lawyering, really thoughtful lawyering, but with much smaller teams in a much more efficient way, with rates that are a little bit less crazy. I mean, we're in a world now where individual lawyers are charging upwards of $1,000, $1,500 an hour, and we're still expensive, but we're not that expensive.
Gotcha. So it sounds like, trying to do what you were doing before in a more efficient and effective way to get the same results without the cost of hiring a big corporate team to get to the same judgment you probably could have got to yourself.
I think that's right. That's really sort of been the goal, and I think it's worked well. And I think over the time I started the firm really as myself because I didn't know how it would go, and we've grown now to 20 lawyers who are all mostly big firm, expatriates with a similar vision, who want to accomplish the same sort of goals, and we're trying to expand out from our base here in LA and grow the firm and grow the model to other places as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. I know we talked a little bit about, you guys are locally based up in the Los Angeles area as well, and you're looking at other different geographic regions. So tell us a little bit about like your top types of businesses that you guys are actually working for, and the problems or challenges they might actually that you guys are actually solving for, and then where those companies potentially are located.
Sure. We have a client base all over the place. I mean, we even though we're in Los Angeles, I have clients in the middle of the country. I've got several clients in Kansas City, Missouri, for example. We represent some of the big tech giants up in Northern California. We represent a lot of local businesses here. We have some clients on the East Coast, in Boston, where I still have a license, and we even have clients in foreign jurisdictions. I have a client right now that I'm working for in the Netherlands on a case. So it's literally everywhere. So we're a firm that wants to be very efficient. We're trying not to build out massive amounts of office space and things of that sort, but we do see some value in having a physical presence in some of the places that we do a lot of work. So we're looking at eventually moving into Northern California because we've got a strong staple of clients there. We also do a fair amount of work in New York on a consistent basis, so New York is definitely on the agenda to have a physical office space, and then from there we'll see. Those I think are the kind of
Yep.
higher priority locations at this point, just because we already have such a connection to those places.
Gotcha. And then, so what are some of those like top, when you guys take on a case, like what are those qualifiers or metrics that, make sense for you guys to like take something on? Like, what are the challenges that, people are seeing in these cases for where you guys then step in?
Yeah, I mean, we do a variety of different subject matters. They all kind of revolve around business disputes. We don't do, sort of almost easier to talk about what we don't do. We don't do criminal. We don't do, personal injury and things of that sort. We're really focused on business disputes. So it could be anything from breaches of contract. It could be, we do a lot of internal disputes. So companies where there's a group of founders who can no longer get along. We do some technology cases. One of my colleagues is very versed in technology disputes. We do some entertainment because we're here on the west side of Los Angeles, so it's kind of one of the things that you almost have to do here. And we do a lot of insurance coverage too. We represent a lot of policyholders, business policyholders, who can't get their insurance company to come through and pay. For example, I represent some very large outdoor malls who have all kinds of problems that arise for which they have insurance coverage. And sometimes that insurance coverage just doesn't come through, and we either work with the insurance company to try to get them to pay, or if they won't pay, to ultimately sue them. So there's a pretty wide range of different pieces in there, and our clients really range pretty substantially. I mean, we have Fortune 100 clients, we have very successful local clients, local businesses who are clients, and we have sort of high income, high net worth individuals who are also clients. So we have a fairly substantial mix. It really just depends on if it's somebody who has what I think we really specialize in, or what we really focus on, is people who have really complex, interesting legal disputes in the business area that want them done efficiently. They want to hire. They want to hire and work with the lawyer that they hire. They don't necessarily want a team of 25 people at a big firm where a bunch of stuff is kind of assigned down to junior associates. They want a small team of people that are really focused on their case, that they have a relationship with, and work through those problems wherever they take us. I mean, sometimes the cases take a very long time and they're very complicated, but we usually work together pretty successfully to get to the end result.
So it definitely sounds, a little bit of your secret sauce is obviously your expertise in, in the business world around, like you mentioned, like maybe it's a tech company or there's an internal dispute between partners, and obviously being in Los Angeles entertainment law, right? So, your expertise is definitely something that I assume makes a little bit of your secret sauce, but also, your hands-on approach. But I'd be curious to hear from your perspective, like, what would you say kind of makes you guys different, in the market, and, why would people go with you over the competition?
Yeah, I mean, I think we provide the best of both worlds. If you kind of look at the legal world, there's the AmLaw 100, AmLaw 200, the giant firms that are nationwide that have offices all over the country. And there's some advantages to those firms in certain cases. If you have an enormous case and you need to put 30 or 40 or 50 people on a case, and it's hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars a month, and you're a Fortune 100 company, you've got billions of dollars at risk. Like, I get it, that makes perfect sense. But there's a lot of very significant, important cases that don't necessarily require that same level of resource. And that's really the niche that we look for our bigger clients. And then our kind of small to medium sized clients, or small to medium sized to us, they're more local businesses, high net worth individuals. We're really doing kind of life and death, bet the company, bet the business, kind of cases for firms of that size. So it's kind of that mix. So we kind of have, like, I would say, a middle market niche with our biggest clients, and then we really do everything for our kind of smaller to middle sized clients.
Okay. Yeah. So it makes sense why there's definitely some advantages with going with the big law firms. If this is a ridiculous, settlement that might be out there, right? The Dominion is kind of what I'm thinking about.
Yeah.
Right. So it makes sense. But I can see why there's potentially even a focus for you on small to medium sized businesses, because you do want to kind of provide that hands-on approach. There's a little bit more localization there, and you guys can kind of meet face to face. So, like, what do you think is, like, kind of the biggest challenge that you face when trying to find the right cases, right? To make sure that they're a fit for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to have a certain size, because even at our, I think, more efficient way of doing things, you still need a certain amount at issue. It needs to fall within our expertise, or the areas that we feel that we do a great job in. And then part of it is just selling the client that we're the right choice to get the right result. We don't have, one of the advantages of working at a big firm like I used to is that you carry a certain level of credibility walking in the door, because you've got this name behind you that everybody's heard of, and we don't necessarily have that. And we do lose out on some cases sometimes when we meet with a general counsel of a client and they say, we love you, but if I lose this case, I can't tell the board that I hired somebody that I haven't heard of, or doesn't have this name. So that's a challenge for us sometimes. There's things I think we could do really, really effectively that I think just sometimes need to go to a name. And then the other thing is just kind of getting the word out about us. I mean, we don't do the type of work that is, and we don't attract the type of clients who are going to find us on TV or a park bench or the back of a bus. That's just not, that's not our niche. But you still need to get the name out there. You still need to get, the phone still needs to ring. I think we do a pretty good job of, selling ourselves when phone rings. But part of the issue and part of the problem is just to get known enough so that people give you a chance and they call you, and we can
Absolutely.
talk to them about our approach and how we would handle things and how we would do it. And I think we tend to have a pretty good success rate once we get that call. It's really just making the phone ring.
Yeah, right. So I know it makes sense that there's like a lot of, relationships, getting referrals to, to there to kind of sustain the pipeline and the amount of, cases you guys are working on. But it also makes sense why, you guys are a little bit smaller, right? But you still need to get your name out there and have an additional pipeline of potential new
Yeah,
cases that you guys can also be working on. So how are you guys, what are you guys focusing in on to grow? And how are you guys growing?
sure. I mean, traditionally, we've been largely referral based, as you say. We get a lot of referrals from bigger law firms because it's things that either subject matter wise they can't take, or maybe they're a little bit more too controversial, or maybe they're, more rate sensitive, or maybe they have conflict issues. We're a great source for that sort of thing because we take care of the client. We send them back to the big firm who does their corporate transactional work or whatever that we don't do. So we get a lot of work from that space. Sometimes some of the cases I'm most proud of is we get cases from our prior opposition. One of my biggest cases right now, I was referred to from some folks that I won a trial against. They thought I did a really good job, and so they had a client they couldn't handle and sent it my way. So there's things like that. But more generically, we spend a lot of time and money on the website. We try to get to lawyer events and things of that sort. But we've struggled a little bit to find the right niche in terms of getting the name out there in a way that is consistent with who our business is and who our clients really are. It's we've tried to. We have some lawyers who have a lot of expertise in some very specific areas. For example, one of my partners is very involved in artificial intelligence and gets quoted a lot. So that's a great source to get in newspapers and press about what's really happening on the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, which I think is fascinating. And it, um, we work on like I say, trying to get the website out there, trying to get in the legal press. But it's hard to. I think it's hard to very specifically target the actual end clients. Trying to get to general counsels of large to medium-sized businesses, big enough to have an internal legal department. But how do you get directly to that? I think that direct sales point is always kind of a challenge for us.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, ideally you need a team to do that for you and is only focused on doing that, right? And getting your name out there. That's,
Yeah.
that's one way to kind of grow and expand from, I guess, so from like a sales perspective, but also from like a relationship driven perspective and have the continuous outreach. It's because it does sound like a lot of the pipeline of not necessarily leads, but of cases you guys have taken have been from almost, it sounds like channel partners in like the B2B
Mhm.
world, right?
Yeah.
Having these back channels set up with people you already have relationships with. We have great synergy together. We trust them. We trust their kind of service you. This is why we're going to recommend that you go with them. And it sounds like that's why you guys are maybe struggling also to continue to find the right niche because you have that pipeline, but there's no additional messaging that's going out to continue to try to grow into those markets.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. And I have a very active LinkedIn presence. Some of my colleagues have a pretty active Twitter presence. So we do try to take some advantage of social media, but
Yeah.
it's hard to do it in a very, in my view, I think one of our challenges is to figure out how to do it in a really organized, efficient way to kind of really target audiences that we would like to, talk to, but don't have a kind of an easy way to get to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing you want to do, is ensure that you're removing all the friction in like their research process and making this as easy as possible for them to find, you guys on the web. So there's a bunch of ways we can kind of talk about that offline. But the easiest thing is just, ensuring that you have the right contact information. It's easy for someone to get a hold of you, right? That's easy, step number one. But also, like, if they have to fill out a form or something like that, is making that like, just a couple fields, just to ensure like you're getting people into conversations with you or your team as quickly as possible to field them to see if they're qualified, right? So but you also make sure you have the eyeballs coming to your website too. And there's obviously different ways you can focus on inbound marketing tactics to try to drive people to the site, especially in the geographic regions that people might be searching for. So I can see why marketing is definitely a big way that you guys are trying to grow and scale the business, by looking at different ways to grow that pipeline. What's something that you want to like celebrate like a year from now, Ethan? Like, is it landing a landmark case, or is there a specific maybe revenue metric? Like, what is your North Star that you're saying, okay, cool, like we did this over the last year and here we are in April 2024?
Yeah, I think when we get to April 2024, I would like to say we're open in Northern California. That would be a big plus for us, I think, to get the firm open there. We've had pretty sustained revenue growth year over year every year, so I would like to see that continue. I'm pretty happy with where that lands. You can always tick it up, but I think continuing to grow and attract talent. I think there's a really interesting. It's a really interesting time now, because if you go back, a year or two, the big firms were gobbling up talent like crazy. I mean, it was, the deals were happening. Notwithstanding COVID, you would have thought things would have slowed down. The big firms were actually sucking up a lot of lawyers. It was very difficult actually for us to hire, mid-level associates, because they're getting paid so much money to go to big firms that it just, didn't always make sense for us given our model. Things have switched a lot. Things have turned quite a lot. You start to see now that there's stealth layoffs and different, some of the big firms are downsizing. There's talent again that's available. And so I would like to see a year from now for us to really be able to take advantage of that and pull some of that talent that's kind of loosened up from the bigger firms. It's really, I think, an opportunity for us. So I'm in some ways I'm more interested in us building out the footprint and building out the talent base. The cases and revenue will come if you have the right, if you have the right team and the right footprint. Obviously high profile cases, interesting cases is, the lifeblood of any law firm. So it's not to say I don't want that, but I think in terms of the things that I'm really sort of focused on doing, it's really more taking this opportunity to kind of round out our team in some ways that I think would be helpful to build out for the future. I mean, this firm's kind of become my baby, and I really enjoy kind of growing it and positioning it and getting it to the right place. So I'd say those are the things that I'm really focused on the most.
Yeah, scaling is probably the biggest thing that I hear most often when I talk to people like yourself, is like the biggest challenge that people are trying to overcome. And it's funny to hear you say like you're experiencing kind of almost a talent pool that was not as large as it is probably today. Like, even because in comparison to like the B2B tech world, and you saw the layoffs happening at the end of last year, beginning of this year in the tech world, and now there's a huge pool of developers, sales, marketers, people who had these jobs at tech companies who are now back on the job market. So it sounds like there's the same thing happened even in the in the law world, that maybe there's really big growth and expansion at the beginning, a couple of years ago during COVID, and now it's maybe even like a bit of a correction there too.
Yeah, I think there is definitely a correction. I do see it as an opportunity, and I think it is parallel the tech industry in a lot of ways. I mean, a lot of big firms do chase the the growth in the tech market and the deals that are happening. And then when those slow down, when the businesses slow down, the law firms just, a few months behind that. And so we're starting to experience those, sorts of issues. So we kind of take a contrarian approach in the sense that I think we, in a lot of ways, actually thrive in those time periods, right? So when there's money everywhere and everybody's doing great, it's easier to hire sort of the big name law firm that might be very expensive. We're more of a value proposition, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think when things get a little tight, it doesn't necessarily mean the lawsuits go away, but maybe you want to deal with them in a little bit more efficient way, or maybe you want to, manage your legal spend a little bit differently. And, we're kind of a great spot for that. So if we can kind of grab some more of that work and grab some more of that talent, that's going to position us as we, try to grow. So I think I almost view us as a little bit counter-cyclical by nature.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I can see, with the way people have been buying these days, like they're looking for, definitely more hands-on approach because people are busy throughout the day. They don't want to spend their time doing things that are outside of their job, right? Like they want to be managing what they have to do every single day. They go home to their families from a work-life balance and mental health perspective, right? And companies are also, trying to be more efficient with their spend. The market isn't where it was, right? So
Right.
a company like yourself and the people who are listening, right, and hearing like the hands-on approach you have, doing a lot more with less and still getting the same amount of value, is what they might find if they were to partner with you guys. So Ethan, like as we wrap things up here, like anything you'd like to share, anything you think our listeners would need to know about you or the company that we haven't covered thus far?
Sure. I mean, I guess I just want to, tout as much as anything, how to find us if you find anything in the podcast interesting. We're at bnsklaw.com is our website. I'm at Ethan at bnsklaw.com. I also have, as I said, a pretty large LinkedIn presence. Some of my colleagues from the same firm also have, Twitter and other presence. And I again, just to sort of reiterate, I think our value proposition really is that I think we really provide sophisticated services, really at the same quality that you would get at any of the top firms, at a level of both efficiency and rate that I think is much more reasoned and attractive and provides some real value. I mean, I think there's nothing more frustrating for clients to pay, a huge hourly rate and then find out second, third year lawyers are doing their work. That's not something that you're going to get here. You're going to get seasoned senior lawyers who are going to do your work and take ownership of it. And, I think that's really what we provide more than anything.
Yeah, that's something from the outside looking in, you probably wouldn't like think about, at least something that I would think about, but it makes a lot of sense, where you guys can kind of fill that gap and where you're working on it, right? Versus, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny.
It's crazy to me. Sometimes I literally see cases where, there's, third, fourth, fifth year lawyers who are getting charged out by big firms at the same rate that, I or some of my, colleagues who've been doing this for 20 years or 25 years are charging. And it's kind of mind boggling. I mean, God bless if you can get that rate, but I'm not sure if I was a client that would be something I'd be very fond of paying.
For sure. It makes sense. Well, it sounds like, we'll put the ways people can find you in the description. You mentioned you guys go to events, anything coming up, where can people, meet you at? Where are you going to be?
That is a great question. I should have done a better job preparing where my colleagues are. I have a series of trials coming up, so you won't find me any place other than a courtroom or a conference room probably for the next 2 or 3 months. I know one of my colleagues, Ryan Abbott, is, as I say, very involved in the artificial intelligence world. He wrote a book and is doing. I know he's on the. He's out talking about artificial intelligence quite a lot. So if you're interested, that might be a place to go look. But I can't tell you events off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Oh, good. Yeah, we'll see if we can get Brian to share a link and share that in the description too, so people can check that out. Well, cool, Ethan. Look, I feel like I've learned a lot about you. Yeah, I appreciate you being here and kind of sharing your story and telling us a little bit about what you guys are doing at BNSK and your approach and who you work with. So I feel like, again, I've learned a lot about the organization too and how you guys are growing and scaling. And so I definitely appreciate you being here and sharing that part of your story.
Well, thank you for having us. I enjoyed the conversation and look forward to furthering it.
You bet. Thanks, Ethan. One, I
Sure.
appreciate everyone watching and sorry, and listening too. Everyone have a great rest of the day and thanks for tuning in.